miss out. There's a special video talking about an incredible opportunity for you. So don't miss out. Stay up to date with us by simply texting the word eBlast to the number on the screen. Text the word eBlast to the number on the screen and follow us and receive our weekly updates.
All right, so we have two types of connect groups happening. We have connect groups and we also have prayer groups. And if you wanted to get connected, we want to hear from you, we want to see you. And even though we are still socially distancing, we are still digitally connecting.
Parents, if you're tracking with us, we didn't forget about your kids. We have a special Kid Culture YouTube channel for them where an amazing Kid Culture team prepares lessons for them, amazing videos that go out, amazing crafts for them to do every week. So don't miss out. The link is in the description of this video, or just ask someone of our team members here in the chat and they'll be happy to give them to you.
So Kingdom Culture, something else that we're excited to be presenting is we are doing a 24/7 prayer initiative. And if this is something that you are excited to try and do, we have a lot of information down in the description below.
If you have been tracking with us for the past 3 weeks, you know that we are in the midst of a Team Stocks July. It has been amazing. We had different guest speakers, people that are coming and just investing into the life of the house. This is not only for team, this is open for anybody. So if you're watching, you qualify for it. Do you want to be a part of it? Send us an email to vip@kingdomculture.ca, or if you follow us on our weekly emails that we send, the link will be there and sent your way. So I hope you don't miss it tomorrow. It's gonna be amazing. I have a special friend of mine also coming from Brazil, speaking on the power of prayer and government. I know it will encourage you. So I hope to see you tomorrow, 8:30 p.m. on Zoom. Hey KC family, I want to encourage you in our giving this morning. I hope you're doing well. I want to thank you so much for your generosity in the season. Thank you so much for staying faithful to this house. We really, really appreciate you. I want to encourage you out of Psalms 27 that says, "Some trust in chariots, some in horses, but we trust in the name of the Lord our God." And this is something that me and my wife, we are always talking about, and remembering to make our decisions not based out of circumstances, but remembering that our trust is not it's not in money, it's not in the right circumstance, it's not based out of a season, but it's based out of a word of God. And I know that's not always easy, but we got, and like my wife is always remember me, like remember where God called you to be, remember the words that he promised over our lives. And this is a constant reminder that we have to have for ourselves. Our trust is not in chariots, our trust is not in money, our trust is not in the government. Our trust belongs to Jesus. And I want to encourage you this morning to keep trusting him, because he owns all gold, all silver, everything. He's the best place for our investments. So the ways of giving are appearing on the screen, and also check this video after. And thank you again, Kingdom Culture, for your awesome generosity. This morning we're very excited because we have another guest speaker that's gonna bring it. It's gonna be super powerful. I know it will encourage you. Watch this amazing clip. Wow, I'm super excited to hear Dr. Glenn. It's gonna be so good. And guys, don't miss at the end of this video, at the end of the live with Dr. Glenn, there will be a special video and a special opportunity for you. You're gonna hear more from Pastor Sean and Dr. Glenn at the end.
Awesome. I'm excited. I hope you're excited. Grab your coffee, grab whoever's with you, and let's enjoy this experience. Let's go.
Hey, Kingdom Culture, so glad that you're with us. Again, we are still in our series, Revive 2020, where we are believing for God, as we've been believing and as we've been talking about over and over again, for God to revive certain areas of our life. It's been an amazing series. I want to welcome all of our Kingdom Culture community today on our live, as well as all those that are from abroad watching, our extended family, those that are new with us, welcome. I know that today is going to powerfully impact your life, your relationship, your marriage, your leadership, and your friendship. So get ready. It's going to be awesome. I'm so excited because today I have the privilege of welcoming Michelle and I's personal marriage counselor, Dr. Glenn Hill. Dr. Glenn, so glad to have you.
Hello, Sean. How you doing? Oh, amazing. Hello, Sean. Hello, Kingdom Culture, and hello, world. It's great to be with you.
You are an incredible man. This man has changed the course of Michelle and I's relationship over the last year and a half. He has given us tools in our tool belt that we never knew existed. He's added components and value to our life that we needed but didn't know we needed. And I just believe today the same thing is going to happen for you that are watching. And so I want you to get out your notepad. I want you to get out your phone, take some notes, because I believe the things that Dr. Glenn Hill is going to drop today, I believe will be something that you will bring into your future on the long haul. So I want to encourage you to do that. Don't miss these moments. I want to give a little bit of a shout out to his credentials and who he is and his backdrop, his history. You know, Dr. Glenn Hill has been working with marriages for over 30 years. He's got a master's in marriage and family therapy. He's got a PhD in clinical sexology. He's an author and songwriter, married 38 years, 4 children and 10 grandchildren. That's a massive, incredible repertoire and backdrop to biography. And we're so thankful that you're willing to step on here with us today, Dr. Glenn Hill. I really believe that you're going to bring some amazing truth. You know, one of my favorite parts of your credentials, honestly, is that you are a PhD of clinical sexology. And I've never met somebody that has both worlds, you know, that part of it, as well as the marriage part of it, and you're faith-based. And I love it. I've never met anybody like you. You were like an anomaly in the body of Christ. And I'm just so thankful that we've got to know you through friends. And now we've recommended like tons of people, tons of friends, tons of team members to you. And I know you have had, by the testimonies, you've had an amazing impact on their life and world. So thank you.
Yeah, well, I love it. It's such a delight. Of course, I really enjoy you and Michelle. It's always lots of excitement and fireworks when we get to spend time together. You're remarkable people.
Well, thank you so much. Well, today we're talking about, I don't want to take too much time. I want Dr. Glenn Hill to dive into this. Today we're talking about the topic, Revive the Connection. Revive the Connection for our Revive 2020 series. And our subject or subtitle is A Chat with the Counselor. My counselor. So this is honestly a very different type of conversation. It's almost vulnerable for me because, man, this doctor, I mean, he's gotten into Michelle and I's world deeply. And so we're so thankful for you. I can't say that enough. And I'm so amazed to have you on this. I want to open it up with this. I want to open it up with a scripture out of Proverbs 18:13, out of the Message translation. And this verse, I believe, really in some way could be like a foundation stone for a lot of your practice because of what you do and what you teach. And it's out of Proverbs 18 verse 13 saying this: answering before listening is both stupid and rude. And that is out of the Message translation. And I remember way back in the beginning of some of the times we've met and we first started to have our sessions together, you made this statement that has echoed through the last year and a half of Michelle and I's relationship. And you said these words. You said, Sean, you can win the court case, but then lose the relationship. In other words, you can have a conversation and you can bring all your evidence and argue your point and not really hear the person, not really listen to the person's heart. You can show your evidence and win, and you can be justifiably right, but then you can lose the relationship. That has powerfully impacted our relationship. And I'd love for you to now just dive into a little bit of your story. I know you have your practice is based around what you call the connection codes and what you call the emotion wheel. And I'd love for you to dive into that. But first, dive into a little bit of your journey, your story. How did you get to where you are today? And then we'll go from there.
Yeah. Well, Phyllis and I, as you mentioned, have been married for 38 years. Our first 10 years were horrific. There was pain and disconnect every day. We met as teenagers. We met at a Bible camp in the summer. I hit her in the head with the softball, and she's never recovered, thankfully. But we were together for about 4 years, married. Thought everything was going to be fairy tale. Thought it was going to be great. We didn't have great examples in our lives of what marriage was. When I married, I could say I'd never really seen a marriage that I thought, I want some of that. I want to duplicate that. But we thought, oh, this is no big deal. We love each other. We're just having fun, so it'll be great. And it didn't work out that way at all. So the first 10 years were very painful, just continual. We were just clueless. We liked each other. We wanted to be together, but we couldn't stand being together. So it was just this incredibly intense struggle every day. And again, literally day after day, after week after week. We often say that we didn't really disconnect because we were always disconnected. So we didn't have anything to disconnect from. We just stayed disconnected all the time. So much pain. That's a big part of our passion today is we know the pain of struggling marriage, but now we know the thrill of connected marriage and are just blown away by this. About the same time that we started getting a little bit of help, getting a little traction in our relationship, somewhere around 10, 11, 12 years in, all of our friends were divorcing. And we were intrigued by that because we were thinking, what happened with them that didn't happen with us? You can only experience so much pain. So we're like, we were maxed out and we actually didn't legally divorce. So what happened with them? So we began asking questions initially, just kind of out of morbid curiosity. What happened because we knew, these were high school sweethearts. We knew that, that so-and-so was going to marry so-and-so and have 2.3 kids and live happily ever after. We didn't know that they were going to marry, have 2.3 kids and then divorce. So we would ask the question, what happened for the two of you? But the trick was we asked the follow-up question because people would say the standard, we grew apart, we fell out of love. But then we go, wait, what does that mean? You fell out of love, like on a Tuesday at 3:00 in the afternoon? Like at some point you quote unquote fell in love. What does that mean? Tuesday at 3, you fell out of love? You grew apart. Well, at some point you grew together. That's why you went on the third date, is because you were growing together. So Saturday afternoon at 4:30, you started growing apart. So initially, again, just kind of out of morbid curiosity, we were curious what happened with these individuals. And then it became something of a quest, and then it evolved into a mission, and now it's our passion. Because we figured out, fast forwarding a bit, we figured out a few years ago what causes people to disconnect. And this became my field, a lot of research, a lot of science behind it, as far as what happens with humans that cause them to disconnect in relationship. Once we figured that out, and pretty much all the brilliant things that have occurred in our the quest with the connection codes are Phyllis's benchmark. I'm supposed to be the smart one, the educated one, but she's the one that always comes up with the pertinent things like, oh, so a number of years ago, she said, wait, if we now know what causes people to disconnect, turn it upside down. That's what causes people to connect. And that's what we now call the connection codes. The connection codes are the blueprint of how humans connect in relationship, but they're also a set of tools as far as how to make that happen. Most people don't suffer from bad intentions. Some do, but most don't. Most of them have the greatest of intentions. They just don't have the tools. They don't know how to do what they're so desperately craving to do. That was certainly true of Phyllis and myself. We really, really wanted to be connected and were clueless. Again, not for an afternoon, not for a day, a week, a month, a year, for years, for over a decade. And there's so much pain in that. And that's a lot of what drives us today, is because we know the pain, and having that experience of the pain really helps us to cue in to people who are living with the pain. It's my personal theory. We have some data on this, but not a whole lot. I think probably in excess of 90% of marriages are what we would call unsuccessful. What do we mean by that? Well, we do a survey. It's a 10-question survey. 8 of the questions are kind of throwaways. But the 2 questions that we hone in on are, number 1, are you living what you hoped for on your wedding day? And virtually every couple says, ugh, no, not really. Well, that doesn't sound good to me. This is what they dreamed of. This is what they hoped for, and it's not happening. And then the other question is this what you hope your children get to experience? And again, virtually every couple goes, no, not at all. I hope they have much, much better than this. I don't want them to have to endure this kind of, not necessarily even active pain, but just the mundaneness, the blahness of relationships. So if people answer yes to both those, or answer no to both those questions, they're not living what they dreamed of on their wedding day. They're not living what they hope their children get to experience. I'm thinking that's not a good thing. That's not really where we want to be. And it has been our experience that in excess of 90% of couples are in that camp. So my experience has been, and I've sat with people all over the world, I have a fair amount of exposure. I've been doing this for a while. Marriage is pretty much gone worldwide. Now, I'm a faith-based person. I believe that God put marriage in the heart of us, and I think that's why every culture in history has practiced and celebrated marriage. So it's within us. Again, I'm faith-based, but even if it's evolutionary, this is how humans function, but we're not doing it well. I know of very, very few cultures and very few individuals where I would go, wow, they are just nailing it. They just kind of smoothly, automatically went into success. There are a few, but not very many. And Phyllis and I certainly were not one of those. What we get, and I'm fast forwarding a bit, but what we get to live now blows our mind. We did not know that marriage could be like this. Phyllis and I, and we haven't dealt with the definitions yet, but Phyllis and I had 4 disconnects in 2018. We had 3 disconnects in 2019. We were stunned with that. We had no idea this was even a thing. Our culture certainly does not say that. Our culture says marriage is hard work. You have your ups and downs. It ebbs and flows. In 2020, Phyllis and I have had 0 disconnects this year. That blows my mind. We literally wake up every day connected. We spend the day connected, and we end the day connected. I didn't know that existed. I had never heard of that. We've had 3 tense moments total the whole year. 3 tense moments that lasted a number of minutes.
Now you say that, and people are watching are like, okay, what the heck is he talking about? Like, what's a disconnect? I mean, people can barely agree on the paint color to paint their wall. So like, I know we're going to go into that in a second, but there's 2 things I want to just mention at the forefront of this is that Phyllis, which is Dr. Glenn's wife, and Dr. Glenn himself have an incredibly admirable relationship. And the one thing I like about what you do and what you've brought us into is that, yes, you give us the tools, but you also bring us into your personal world a little bit. And then, just now meeting Phyllis, your wife, and seeing how you guys interact, like I tell this to people, like there's leaders that I look up to, there's gifted communicators I look up to, preachers, whatever. But you guys, I feel like out of all the couples that I've ever interacted with, look up to you guys the most. Like, I want what you guys have. And I think all of us need a model. here's the thing. That's what good leadership is. Everyone needs a model to follow. Everyone needs a model to look up to. Everyone needs a new standard. I know Jesus obviously is the golden standard, but then he uses his ambassadors, his representatives, to be also a standard of what things could be like. And you guys are inspiring. I know you're in your late 50s, correct me if I'm wrong, but the stories that you say, and we're going to get into this a little bit, and I want you to go back, and you said that the first 10 years of your marriage wasn't working. And I want to know, what was the turning, like what was the I'm in the pit of despair moment that pulled you up, that shifted the relationship? So you talk about the first 10 years of your marriage, disconnected, not connecting emotionally. What was the shift for you? And then let's continue to go and then develop this idea of what is a disconnect and what is connecting and the connection codes and the wheel of emotion. Let's go there for a little bit.
Yeah. Well, we're fast forwarding a whole bunch here because we haven't laid the groundwork for this, but the big shift for us was in the late 80s. So at that point, we're, 7, 8 years into our marriage. And a friend, a pastor who loved us beautifully, him and his wife just treated us with such gentleness, such kindness, because we were very faith-based then as well. But what I usually heard was this intense coming at you, repent, change, be like Jesus right now, which I was not against. It's not that I was arguing against it. I didn't know how to do that. I didn't know what to do. And this guy, again, we're fast forwarding a whole bunch here, but he just helped me see some things about myself. Up until that point in my marriage, I was exasperated that Phyllis would not do things the correct way, the right way, which coincidentally happened to be my way, was God's way of doing things. And so we had endless conflicts about her not, and I'm talking about things like folding the towels correctly, putting the dishes away the way they're supposed to be, the way God wants them. And that was very clear in my mind. Well, I now know, again, fast forwarding a bunch of years, I now know I was dealing with a very high level of psychological disorder. I scored an 87 on an obsessive compulsive disorder. An 84 in 1987. And that was earth shattering for me and overwhelming to realize that so many of these conflicts came because of funky stuff with me. I didn't know that. Phyllis didn't know it, but she kind of knew something was funky. And that poor girl was just constantly trying to catch up, trying to do things God's way, the right way, Glenn's way. And it was overwhelming for her, especially once we started having children. She's thinking, I got the laundry done with these little kids running around, clawing at me. That's awesome. And then her husband would come home and go, no, it wasn't done right. And I literally would redo the laundry. I would redo so many things. And that poor girl's going, what is happening here? And she didn't have a clue that, there's some disorders of the psyche. And we'll talk about that a little bit. Just that it's just a disorder of the psyche. One of my dreams, hopefully in my lifetime, if I live long enough, is to change this in our culture, to depathologize psychological disorders. A psychological disorder is simply a disorder of the psyche. Something happens and you get knocked off in your thinking. Well, that was happening with me all the time, but I didn't know that. So I was constantly, as you mentioned earlier, trying to win the court case. I was trying to prove to her that I was right, she was wrong. And so I would try to present to a, metaphorical judge and jury my evidence that I was correct and she's wrong, therefore I win. Well, I might have won the court case. I talk faster than Phyllis. So I could win the court case, but I would lose the relationship over and over and over and over again. So that began evolving for us once we realized that, there's some funky stuff that happens with Glenn here. And again, to depathologize this, that Glenn's not trying to experience this. Glenn's not trying for this to happen in his psyche, in his mind. He just does. And now we're actually able to be entertained by it. Is my theory, again, fast forwarding a bit, is my theory that all of us deal with psychological disorders at some level, at some point in our life. And I don't really care. This is just what happens in your psyche. So, I want to hear about that. So that's what knocks you off course. Which again, usually messes up the relationship. Not always, but frequently it does. Now, Phyllis and I are just able to actually connect through our psychological disorders, are actually able to look at each other and go, oh, wow, so you experience that a lot differently than I do. I'll be darned. I'm not trying to say you're right and I'm wrong. I'm not trying to say that I'm right and you're wrong. This is just what happens for you. So as this began evolving for us and we started getting that, this is just our experience. If you're terrified of spiders, I can lecture you all day long on the safety of spiders. There are very few threatening spiders, and there are in a minuscule number of times that people are damaged by spiders. That doesn't help you any. You have an intense fear of spiders. So I can tell you you're an idiot. I can tell you you're wrong. I can tell you to stop it. That doesn't change anything. All it changes is the fact that you're not going to turn to me in your moment of vulnerability. You're not going to turn to me with your authenticity. And so we're just going to disconnect. So talking about disconnects, a disconnect we kind of define, and it's not an exact definition, but a working definition of when you don't want to be together, when you want to be out of the same room. It's been years since Phyllis and I have done a physical disconnect where she actually walked away from me, which was stunning to me. That happened one time in 2018. And I was like, wait, what? We were in an airport. She literally walked away from me and I didn't know what to do. And I was in a Starbucks line, which you don't ever dare get out of. So I didn't know what to do. So I stayed in the Starbucks line. I prioritized. I did take her a latte, so it's okay. But anyway, a disconnect where you just don't want to be with that person. You don't want to be around them. I'm not talking about just you're struggling through a discussion, even a disagreement. That's simple to do. Now, when we get good at doing the connection codes, even those moments become 20 seconds, become 30 seconds. Phyllis and I rarely ever have tense moments that are more than about a minute, which again blows my mind. I didn't know that was a thing. And I really have to emphasize that this is not me preaching from a pedestal. I can match anybody out there stupid for stupid. I can match anybody out there failure to failure. So I do not want it to be, I don't want people at all to think, oh, they got lucky, they won the lottery, they were born with silver spoons in their mouth. No, we did stupid as well as anybody. And it was just with some help along the way. And again, I'm convinced a lot of God's grace and wisdom that we were able to keep wrestling. We were very diligent. It does take diligence. But because of that, we slowly got some traction. And the last 10 to 15 years have blown our minds as far as what marriage can be. And let me just say that because I know there are people out there listening that are like, well, marriage is just hard work. That's one of our cultural truths, things that we believe as a culture that are not eternal truths. But I am unable to read the story in Genesis of the creation, whether you accept it as literal or allegorical. I cannot read that story and go, God's idea was to make marriage hard work. God's idea was to put these two individuals together who are just going to be brutal with each other continuously, and hopefully they'll learn to coexist a little bit. But what an awful mentality that says that's the goal. And again, nobody starts out that way. No one would go on the second date with that arrangement. No one would go on the third date thinking, well, this is hard work and it's pretty brutal, but I'm committed to it. But that's one of our cultural truths, that marriage is all about commitment. I'm not committed to Phyllis. I'm addicted to her. I'm enthralled with her. I'm mesmerized by her. I'm not committed to her. Now, is there commitment way down there at the baseline, foundationally? Yeah, I guess so. And if Phyllis was in a car wreck and ended up in a coma for 3 years, I'm committed. I'm not getting anything back from her, but I'm seeing her every day. I'm with her every day. But I don't want to set my relationship up that way. That's just in a disastrous scenario where it's just based on commitment. I'm not functioning based on commitment. We are literally just so excited every day. We wake up together in the morning like, oh my gosh, this is going to be a bodacious day. And we haven't even gotten out of bed yet. Wow. And it's really just thrilling to me to get to experience that. And I believe that we can change the world. I believe that we can spread this. Now, the connection codes apply to all relationships, not just marriage. It grew out of marriage counseling, grew out of marriage therapy, but it applies to all relationships, children, coworkers, neighbors. It doesn't matter who it is, because it's just a human experience. It's based on the human condition.
Yeah, and if I can just say this before we dive into there, as I want to go there, I want to talk about the wheel, the emotional wheel, and what that means in context to learning how to connect better. Not, like you said, not only with your marriage, but your friends, as a leader, those that you're leading, the team members around your life, just interactions in general. This is actually really improved, for all those listening, what we're about to dive into has improved my leadership. It's improved my ability to interact with just people in general, not just marriage. But obviously we began to cultivate it from that place, like Dr. Glenn said, out of marriage. But One of the things I just want to say, and that you've said this over and over again, and I know it's fact, I know it's science, I know it's medical, that the many, at least, I don't know what the proper wording is, and you can elaborate on this, many of sickness and disease today can be traced back to some sort of unprocessed emotion. And one of the things I've learned from you greatly is that even if my emotion is like a 2 on a scale of 10, the benefit of processing that emotion is that I'm preventing it potentially from going from a 2 to a 10. And then if I create a culture of this every day, I want to call it like a culture of the connection codes, because culture is something you do over and over and over and over again until it cultivates something and produces a harvest in your life. So I believe that it's one of the ways it's helped me is just learning to like consistently get these emotions out, and obviously in the right context. I'm not going out there and to the whole world on social media everywhere I go and just vomiting my emotion. No, there's like people in my life that I'm learning to do this with better and better so that I'm a healthier version of myself. So let's go there for a little bit. What is the connection codes? What is the wheel of emotion? And we're going to put that up on the screen for those that are watching, and let's just dive into this.
Well, this developed again over a period of time. I am a very emotional person. Now, just so you know, everybody's a very emotional person because this is just based on the human condition. And you'll hear people say, oh, I'm not very emotional. That's not true. That just means they don't process emotion. They don't convey emotion very well because every human on the planet is oxygen oriented. If you ever meet someone and they say, oh, I don't do oxygen anymore, I've just kind of transcended, I'm not into oxygen, that's not true. They may believe that. That's what we would call a psychological disorder. They are oxygen oriented, I guarantee you. If they say, oh, I don't do blood anymore, I don't have any blood in my body, not true. There are certain things that we know are true of all humans. Now, it's important that we stress that psychology is a soft science. We have to be very careful talking about humans and human behavior because there's so much variation. We always say if you put 2 particles of hydrogen with 1 particle of oxygen, you get H2O, and you get it every time, and that's what we call water. And you don't ever get cotton candy or a new car or anything like that. You just get H2O. Well, that's because all the hydrogen particles are the same, and also for oxygen. That's not true with humans. So when you say that so many debilitating illnesses are caused by unprocessed emotion, it's so difficult to prove anything with humans because there's so many variables. We always say that humans are bad lab rats. They keep exiting the laboratory. So if we could keep these humans in a laboratory for 20 years, we could figure this stuff out. Well, they keep wanting to go home and go to the mall and stuff. So it's very difficult to
Love that
in the
analogy.
laboratory. So again, we have to be very careful because the trick is that anytime we say these things, somebody goes, oh, that wasn't true for this situation. Okay, fine. I'm not going to argue with you about that. But we do know this now. We have such a mounting body of evidence. We have longitudinal studies of over 30 years that are coming up with these results. Again, psychology is a soft science. We can't prove or disprove, but we have so much evidence. I was a kid in the 70s whenever it became said a lot that heart attacks are caused by stress. And I was like, well, that's the dumbest thing ever. That's not true. Listen to the phrase, heart attack is caused by the heart. And it was many years, and I was 10 years old, so they didn't really listen to me. But it was many years before I was like, oh, okay, so the stress does this, which then does this, which then does this, which then results in a heart attack. So again, difficult to prove or disprove, but yeah, heart attacks can be caused by stress. And there's so many things that happen in the body when emotions are stored up, when they're dammed up, when they're not processed. So we now know that all humans experience emotion. That's true for every human on the planet. It is a fundamental human right. You have the right to experience what you experience. You have the right to have the emotion that you have. And as a culture, we have said for many years that you do not. We say, Sean, don't experience his emotion, and whatever you do, don't share it. And I think we're worse on men in this culture than women. But across the board, we just kind of tell people to stop being emotional, to step over the emotion, to overcome the emotion. And really all we're doing is telling them to be unhealthy. We want you to suppress this emotion. So number one, emotion is a fundamental human right. Every person on the planet experiences it, and every person on the planet has the right to experience it. You also have the right to convey it. Again, we want to go back to the human condition. when babies are born, they convey emotion. That's what they're supposed to do. We are born into teamship. We are born into tandemship. And we do not say to these babies, just shut up. We do not want to hear about what's happening with you anymore. I hope that you don't say that. And whenever you were 2 months old, 6 months old, 10 months old, a year old, you were really good at this. You just, and this is pre-language. You just conveyed what was happening with you, and others around you responded to you and met your needs. Good. That's what's supposed to happen. This is why we call it coding, because you're coded this way. That 6-month-old baby is not thinking through, what should I do here? I'm feeling a lot of hunger. Oh, I know. I'll let somebody know that I'm feeling hunger. Nope. They're coded that way. It's not cognition. It's coding. They automatically do that when they feel fear, when they feel loneliness, whatever. They automatically convey. I just want to get you to do the same thing. Now, we're adults. I know we have responsibilities. I have a son-in-law who's a firefighter. If he feels fear about that house on fire, well, dude, I get it. I feel fear too, but it's your responsibility to head to the fire when everybody else is headed out. So yes, we have responsibilities, but in general, in relationships, I want you to be able to convey what's happening with you. So the core emotion wheel, which is a big, big tool, what we call a puzzle piece with the connection codes, developed as we started getting that. So all humans experience emotion. We also figured this out is humans connect through emotions. Humans do not connect through logistics. Logistics are the facts, the figures, the information, the content. Logistics get us in the same room together, which is fine. Logistics are not wrong, but they don't connect us. So you can end up in the same room with a whole bunch of, pick a thing, mushroom lovers. So you went to the mushroom lovers convention, but then you experience someone who's not kind to you. You go, oh, I don't like being around that person. I feel hurt whenever the way they speak to me. It's painful. I just don't enjoy it. And I'm like, Sean, that's the number one mushroom lover in the world. You have to be friends with him. You're like, he's a jerk. I don't want to be friends with him. So the logistic is the mushroom loving, but you don't want to hang out with this guy because you experience hurt, you experience pain whenever you're with him, and you don't experience joy with him. So logistics get us in the same room, but they do not connect us. So the core emotion wheel is all about the core emotions. Research tells us that humans experience 8 core emotions. There's a lot of debate on that. You're welcome to Google it, and somebody can write a paper up on it for a class next Saturday. But basically, we use the 8. We now know that there are 5 neural regions associated with emotion, and that's true for every human. That's just how humans function. So there's 2 of the regions that we divide because they present so differently externally, affectively. We divide those up. So, but we function with we operate on the premise of the 8 core emotions. And whenever people get really good at processing those, now understand there are far, far, far more emotions than that, but all of the rest of them are hybrids, are combinations of the core emotions. And so you put those together and then you get this other emotion, but people don't know how to deal with that. I have a book that was written in the 70s that psychologists would have somebody sit down and they would hand them a list of 142, I think it was, emotions. Well, it's going to take you an hour to figure out which one is happening with you. You can't narrow that down. That's so many. It's such a long list. So when we hand people the list of 8, they're like, oh, yeah, that's what's happening with me. And they get better and better at recognizing that. And the other thing is that whenever I hear your emotion, it touches my heart. This, again, is just part of the human condition. I know there's been lots of reprogramming, but there's not been recoding. So in other words, you know of examples where someone was vulnerable and they were not approached with safety and security. Our society is experiencing a whole lot of that right now. But in general, the human condition, the human experience is that if I see your vulnerability, if I see your authenticity, it draws me to you. I want to connect with you. You've heard of stories of people that have been best friends for 30 years because one of them stopped on the side of the road to help a guy change his tire in the rain. And just from that, a person in a position of vulnerability was helped with some safety and security. Somebody stopped and helped them, and they became best friends. Not because they love tires, not because they love changing tires in the rain. That's the logistics. No, it's because of the emotion.
Wow, so good.
That they were able to connect through that. So the core emotion wheel is all about getting better at accessing, identifying, and verbalizing the emotion, not communicating through the emotion, but communicating the emotion. Whenever I hear that Sean is experiencing pain, whenever I hear that Sean's experiencing fear, I'm just automatically drawn to him. Again, that's my coding. I'm not trying to do that. I'm not thinking, oh, Sean's being vulnerable, so I'll just try to be safe for him. No, it's automatic. And you see people do this all the time because, again, that's what we do with babies. This 10-month-old baby cries, and we automatically cue into them. I was always amazed with Phyllis. She was a stay-at-home mom, and I was a contractor, not a good one, but I had to work too hard. But when one of our babies would cry, Phyllis would go, oh, that's a hungry cry, or that's a tired cry, or that's a dirty diaper cry. And I'd be like, sounds like a cry to me. But Phyllis could actually hear the tone or something that she would know what was happening with that cry. I never really cued in that well with them. And of course, she was with them a lot more than I was, but she understood their language. She understood what was happening with them. And again, we want our babies to communicate. We want them to convey what's happening, because if they don't, then their needs are not met and actually could die from that. So conveying this emotion is a good thing, not a bad thing. And again, we're just all older babies. We never got recoded. I know we have adult responsibilities, but my goal is to get Sean to be able to turn to Michelle in his position of vulnerability, in his authenticity, and just say, babe, this is what's happening with me here. I want Michelle to be able to be present with him, not lecture him, not tell him that he's wrong to experience fear. He's wrong to experience pain. Well, he's not trying to experience that. I can tell Sean that all day long. Sean, stop experiencing the emotion. Well, he's just going to stop talking to me. That's not going to change his experience. It's not going to help him, and he's just going to get him to shut up, which again, frequently is our approach. We just want people to shut up and stop talking about their emotions. My goal is for you to talk about it more.
So let's talk about the wheel. Let's talk about the 8 core emotions, and then how we go about beginning to create a culture of learning how to process this so that we are healthy.
Yeah. Well, the core emotion wheel, and I'm assuming we can get that put up on the screen there. The 8 core emotions, we put joy in the middle because that's our dream, is to live a life of joy. But there's a pleasure center in the brain. It's very dopamine, oxytocin oriented. Again, that's true for every human on the planet. We all have this pleasure center, and that's what we call joy. And when you get hit with dopamine, when you get hit with oxytocin and several other neurotransmitters as well, you just experience joy. You're not trying to experience joy. You're just experiencing joy. Now, let me say this too, that emotions are not good, bad, right, or wrong. Emotions just are. A lot of times people look at the core emotion wheel and they say, why are they all negative except for one? That's not true. Joy can be incredibly dangerous. Cocaine addicts are cocaine addicts because of joy. They did cocaine the first time for whatever reason, and they got flooded with dopamine. As actually the reuptake was inhibited. And so they experience a tremendous amount of joy. And guess what that gets them to do? They do cocaine again and again and again and again. And now they're what we call coke addicts. So we could say that joy led to their cocaine addiction. So in that situation, I guess we would say joy is bad. Well, I don't say it's bad. I just say it is. It just is. That's what's happening.
That's really
and the
good.
emotion is not processed. So joy is in the middle. We have a fear region in the brain. Fear is the fastest activating and the fastest dissipating of the core emotions. Where you're sitting right now, if a light bulb exploded, you would jump. It's just automatic. You're not thinking about it. You don't sit there for 3 minutes and then jump. And if you did that, I'd be concerned that it took you 3 minutes to react to that light bulb exploding. But if an hour later you're still jumping, now I'm thinking that's kind of funky because that should have dissipated a long time ago.
Right.
That's what we call trauma. For whatever reason, you're hit, and that's what PTSD is. You keep getting hit with fear about this. And my goal is to get you to process that emotion, and we'll be able to help release you from that. The 2 on the right side, shame and guilt, fire in what we call the disgust region of the brain. We don't use the term disgust very much, but we separate those 2 affectively because of behavior, facial expressions. Guilt looks very different than shame. Guilt is over an action. Shame is over my essence. We say that shame is the most dangerous of the core emotions. Unprocessed shame becomes toxic. And we think that most suicides come from unprocessed shame. The person just gets crushed. You'll notice the way it's spelled, even S-H-A-M-E, the little me. You feel less about yourself. And when people feel less and less and less and less about themselves, eventually they say, it doesn't matter if I exist. And then they end up sadly taking their own life.
That's a huge one because, like you said, little me. I think so many people, like especially in this culture today, feel like they're just insignificant. They're comparing themselves to the next guy. We live in a media-driven world where our eyesight is on the bigger, better thing or the bigger, better person, and we feel like, oh, who am I? I'm this little insignificant drop in the pond. Why do I matter? And so shame is a big one. Keep going.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's huge. And then I say to people, pay attention to all the emotions. Really pay attention to shame. If someone says to you, "Oh, I feel some shame there," literally stop and just sit down with them, because if that's not processed, they're headed in a really, really bad direction. Again, all the emotions matter, but
Yeah.
shame is so dangerous, and if it's unprocessed, it becomes toxic. So really cue in to that. Okay, at the top of the wheel is anger. It's blurry because there's two of them. There's a primary and a secondary emotion that we call anger. It's unique on that list in this regard. Primary anger, core level anger, is a great driver. It's the longest and the strongest motivator. Again, it's not good, bad, right, or wrong. It just is. Nothing great was ever accomplished without core level anger. When the marathon runner hits whatever this pain level, for me it'd be about 150 yards, but for a marathon runner, they're a bunch of miles in, and their body sends them a signal that says, let's head on home, get a snack, take a shower, take a nap. And the marathon runner goes, nope, I'm going to keep running. I got 12 more miles to go. And the body's like, what? Are you crazy? We sent you the message. There's pain. And it's core level anger that drives them to go past
Wow.
that pain.
Interesting.
But secondary anger is what happens second. And again, it's not necessarily connected to core level anger. But if Sean and I are going to lunch with a group of guys, I show up for lunch. I walk up to the table, and Sean looks up and goes, you wore that jacket to lunch today? I might show him, hopefully I'm a little beyond this, but I might show him anger, and I might say, well, who made you the fashion police? And look at you. What the heck are you wearing? Some kind of leftover shirt from Goodwill or something? I don't know where you got that thing. So I'm responding in anger, but the anger was actually second. What happened first is I felt hurt. I felt some pain by what he said, and I maybe felt some shame as well. I felt embarrassed in front of our friends. And if I'm a good connection coder, I would just say that to him. I'd say, oh, dude, that felt kind of hurtful. And I felt a little bit of shame when you said that.
Wow.
And we would connect through that emotion. If I show him secondary anger, we're not going to connect. As far as I know, secondary anger never connects people. I think it always pushes them apart. So, But anyway, then the three on the left are what we call the pain region of the brain. We now know from research that the brain does not distinguish physical pain from emotional pain. That is a stunning revelation a number of years ago whenever this became clear. So whenever I feel hurt by Phyllis and I say to her, well, that was painful, that's what's happening. And if she were to look at me and look over, she'd see that my arm started bleeding. There's like a cut on my arm and I started bleeding. Well, that's not really true, but that's what my brain is recognizing. It'd kind of be cool if it was true, because Phyllis would look over at me and she would see my vulnerability, and she would look over and go, oh my gosh, babe, well, what happened to your arm? And I said, well, I felt kind of hurt by what you said. And we would connect through that. But again, my body doesn't know that, but my brain knows that. And if I'm able to convey it to my partner, then she can be present with me and hear my pain.
Now, just stop there for a second. I love that. Sure. Like, just camp there for a second before you continue on the wheel. That you always use an illustration when talking often where you talk about, if I stab you in the leg and you're bleeding and you say, ow, I'm not going to come at you and say, why are you saying ow? I mean, you're bleeding. And how research shows that the brain can't differentiate between physical and emotional pain. Can you go there for a little bit while we're on that specific one?
Yeah, and if we could get that just as fellow humans, that when I feel hurt by Phyllis, I'm not trying to feel hurt. And again, she can say to me, stop feeling hurt. That doesn't change anything for me. I didn't start feeling hurt. I'm not trying to feel hurt, so I can't stop feeling hurt. Again, just as you say, you get stabbed in the leg with an ice pick, and I say to you, well, stop feeling that. That's not an option. You didn't start feeling it. You're not trying to feel it. You just feel it. And again, if I yell at you enough, you'll just stop telling me about it. You'll go talk to somebody who cares about you, which is what most relationships do. They shut down the emotion and they realize that, oh, that person's not safe for me. And if I said to you, stop bleeding, you've got this ice pick in your leg and I want you to stop bleeding. Well, you're not trying to bleed. That's not something you can just stop doing. And the brain is not recognizing the difference if Sean feels hurt by Michelle. And I'm not even blaming Michelle. I'm not saying Michelle's a bad person. For whatever reason, we'll call it a stepping on the foot. She walked by, she accidentally stepped on Sean's foot. He's barefooted and he feels pain. Well, I'm not blaming Michelle for that. That was an accident. It just happened. I'm not pathologizing Michelle. I'm not blaming Sean. This is just what happened in their interaction. That's a big thing too, is we don't pathologize people or their behavior. Can we do things intentionally from a bad heart? Well, sure we can. But in general, I'm just going to assume that the person is just functioning, and for whatever reason, the other felt pain in that. So the three on the right, we're talking about hurt is a sharp stabbing pain. It really lights up the brain scan like a fireworks display, big high peaks. Sadness doesn't have the high peaks. It's a little bit lower level, but it's thicker. And then loneliness is that dull, aching pain. You've had a headache for a couple of days. There's no big peaks in it, but it's very thick, and it's still, it functions in the pain region. And because it's chronic, it becomes a really intense pain. The Happiness Institute out of Denmark, and again, psychology is a soft science. We can't prove or disprove anything with human behavior. But the Happiness Institute in Denmark said that living in loneliness is more damaging to the human experience than smoking a pack of cigarettes a day.
Wow.
That blows your mind.
Wow.
Now, I'm not trying to sell cigarettes here, but if you have the choice of living in deep connection or smoking cigarettes or not smoking cigarettes, I've confused myself here, but you get the idea.
Yeah.
It's actually better for you to smoke cigarettes than it is to live in disconnection. That's stunning. That's just, wow.
And just to clarify something, you could be lonely and be in a room full of people. You could have, amazing, or even, I don't know if they're amazing relationships, but lots of relationships, and feel this constant state of loneliness. Can you talk about what that means? As I know we haven't gone to guilt yet, but talk about what loneliness means when it comes to just what you're talking about when you mention loneliness.
Right. Yeah. And we tend to think culturally that activity is connection, and it's not. People can be incredibly active. They can be very, very involved with other people and be flooded with loneliness the whole time. I've certainly experienced that. I'm a fairly gregarious person. Some people call that annoying, but I'm very active. I'm always active in the room whenever I'm at a party, but I might be experiencing loneliness the whole time. So loneliness is a question of vulnerability, authenticity. Am I connecting with the person? I can be very, very active and very, very disconnected at the same time. Again, we've really confused that as a culture. And we look at people and we go, oh my gosh, that person is so popular. He's always involved with other people. He's never lonely. No, some of those people are the loneliest people you'll ever meet.
Well, it's kind of like why let's say high profile people get addicted, because they just feel like the platform is it's their adrenaline rush. It's their only form of connection, but it's not real connection. It's a kind of a facade of a connection. And internally they just feel lonely. And that's why they go to, and it's on all fronts. I mean, everybody experiences a level of this, but some, like you say this, and I still want to continue the wheel here, but you say this often, that everybody experiences one common core emotion consistently. There's one that kind of is like always there, it seems like. I know you've said that before.
Yeah. For most people, that's the case. Again, there's 7.5 billion people on the planet,
right.
So there's a bit of variation. But typically most of us have a go-to, and I don't even want to say go-to as an active. It's just what happens for us. And as a side note with this, I sit with a lot of pastors, and pastors struggle with this probably as much or more than anybody. Because we've set up this culture where they're not supposed to be authentic. And we think they're being authentic, right. But we've set up a scenario where they are not authentic. And I sit with a lot of pastors where our very first session together, they say, I have to make sure that we're under confidentiality here, because if my congregation ever found out my struggles, I would be fired on Monday. And so they have this sad dichotomy where, because then as the conversation continues, at some point they'll say, one of the things I struggle with is getting my people to be authentic, getting my people to be open and real with each other. Well, your people are just following your example. They're great disciples. They're doing an excellent job of imitating you, of emulating your behavior. And again, it's not from a bad heart. These pastors are not doing this on purpose. It's just they don't know how to do it, because the system is set up so that if they're authentic, if they convey their struggles, they could get fired on Monday. Well, that's a pretty scary place to be. But then they model this bad example of inauthenticity. Their people duplicate that model, and now we have this incredibly inauthentic church,
Wow.
this incredibly
So
inauthentic
true.
group of people. And it's just a cycle. It keeps going on and on and on, and repeating itself. So, but let me finish with the loneliness on the wheel. Just understand the danger of that. And you think about what we've done as a culture to get rid of tobacco usage, taxes, and of course, so many messages. I was a kid whenever those messages really started getting out there and it began being propagated. If you go to certain places in Central America and you go to a convenience store, the packs of cigarettes, not on the side, but on the face, say, "This will kill you." That's a bad marketing campaign. In Europe, you'll see packs of cigarettes that have pictures of damaged lungs, babies that have been harmed by secondary smoke, and people are buying those cigarettes. So, but we have really been intense as a culture to get people to stop this. I would love for, and I'm 100% for that. Again, I'm not trying to sell cigarettes, but I would love for us to get that intense about disconnection, get that intense about loneliness, to say, okay, we cannot let our people be lonely. Let's find out what's happening with them. And that's a big thrust of the wheel, is to get people out, to get people, invite people into themselves and into their own experience, and let people share that with them. And I don't know that I've ever sat with anybody that does the core emotion wheel together and don't learn new things about the other, whether it's their partner, whether it's their
100%.
kids, or whether it's their neighbors, and to find out that, wait, what? That brings fear to you? Whoa, I had no idea.
There was emotions that I felt that I didn't even know I was feeling for a long time until I had the conversation with you. And I'm like, that's what I've been feeling this whole time. That's what's always in my head. And I didn't even know it was in my head until somebody gave me the tool to like unveil it, to expose it. I had no idea.
Yeah.
So it's true.
Yeah. And again, just think of it as an illness that, pick something, you stepped on a nail and you pulled the nail out and it hurt like crazy. But what you didn't realize is that you got tetanus from this metal thing. You're like, no, I pulled the nail out. It's okay. But that's going to grow in your body.
Wow. Yeah.
I'm not a medical doctor. I don't know what was going to happen with the tetanus, but it's going to be bad. But you didn't even know you had it. And so now this is going through your bloodstream, your flesh, whatever. Again, I don't know how that works. But just because you didn't know it was there doesn't mean it's not going to bring damage to you. And that's true with so many diseases, with cancers. When a doctor tells you have cancer, he's wrong. You've had cancer for years and years and years. Probably every human on the planet has cancer. Cancer is simply a misreplicated cell that duplicates itself again and again and again. So you've had cancer. I have cancer. You have cancer. The body just deals with it. When our immune system gets broken down, most of the time because of unprocessed emotion, then the cancer gets a foothold and gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's whenever we finally recognize it and the doctor goes, oh, you have cancer. But again, you've had it for a long time. It's just the body was handling it. So we just want to make sure that people are processing the emotion. And that's, again, part of the purpose of the wheel is so you start recognizing it. Phyllis and I have been so thrilled in our adventure together as we've recognized things that happen for us. My stuff was more obvious just because I'm that unhealthy, so it's easy to see. Phyllis is very, very functional, just societally, in business. Everybody looks at her as like, whoa, she is on point. Well, yeah, but she's just a human. And as we have discovered some of her fears that we had no idea. And I remember when we first started talking about this many years ago, Phyllis would go, what? I'm not afraid of anything. Well, that's true. She's a very powerful person. She's not afraid of anything, but we're just talking brain chemistry. We're just talking what happens in the brain, and she gets hit with fear.
Wow.
And when we depathologize that and we stop yelling at her and saying, stop feeling fear, stop it. Well, no, I just want to hear what happens for her. And now we realize that, oh, this girl gets hit with fear a lot. Okay, I just want to make safe space for her. Just the last couple of years, we've started recognizing some of her guilt